Thank you very, very much. It's been a fascinating morning for me, sitting here listening to the attitude that I see. From America, we tend to be, I think, optimistic to a fault in the view of Europe. I just heard someone back there talk about Germans and technology being paranoid. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think I see that Austrians perhaps are worried, a little more metered view here. But we also heard Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg talk about the German election. As we go through the list now of Brexit, Trump, and as an American, I apologize to you all, Le Pen, the AfD, now here the FPO. I wonder, let me ask a provocative question to start, whether what we're seeing in all of this is in part a reaction against, a revolution against technology in the future. What's the view of society now to the wonders that we bring them in technology?
Well, I think what we're seeing is certainly some reaction to change. And, you know, there's no doubt, and I think the conversation this morning about speed, that's a new normal. You know, things are accelerating and the possibilities are accelerating. You know, who would have imagined, you know, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that everything in our world would be connected, that information would be available at the level that it's at. You know, who would have thought that we could order things, you know, as we heard this morning, you know, at our whim and make things happen so quickly that cars would drive themselves and the like. There's just so much change going, and I think people are struggling to grasp that. Do I have the skills for tomorrow? You know, do I have the security of my information? You know, is that mine? Is that someone else's? Is the news real? And I think there's a lot of worry out there.
Robin?
So I would also like to agree with Jeff and say I'm so sorry for our current president in the United States. But what we are doing, what I'm seeing with things like the FDA, I'm a medical technologist and entrepreneur, is as of this morning, they announced 9 different companies for their new pre-certification program. Meaning, and this includes, by the way, Fitbit, Apple, and even Pear Therapeutics, which just released the very first FDA-approved digital therapeutic, which is a very big deal. And so all of a sudden, these 9 companies, once they're pre-certified, no longer need to go through FDA approval with software for the medical world. This is a huge, massive innovation, and it's going to get products to market much more cheaply and extremely quickly.
Andreas, what's your perspective since we're here as the Americans coming in from the technology world, from the perspective here?
I mean, you started with comments and Brexit, and you can say development of political scene. And maybe if I can add a flavor to this point, I see that the digital development of information gives, you can say, especially populism, a very big space to move in. And if I see in combination the development of startups, like I think Carnegie, for example, who professionally work with spreading informations into volume of media viewers without giving them, you can say, an intellectual background, if it's right or wrong. It drives, you can say, decision and opinions of population. And maybe it brings us all in a situation where we are running behind something into, you can say, a direction where we do not want to be, and ask ourselves in a couple of years, hey, why are we here? And I'm quite frequently in London, working for a company in UK, and if you speak with the people there, they are asking themselves, where did I vote for? I didn't want to vote for Brexit. I just voted to be against the establishment. And that's also a question for me, what makes us being against the establishment when everything is fine? It's in Germany, numbers are going up, but you see an election what never has been. Austria, economy's numbers are going up, but we feel like that we are one of the biggest crises at Earth. And this is something I'm really going around about fake news, populism, what's going up right now in our society.
All right, so we start with that depressing note. Now let's fix it, because we in technology believe that we can. But let's talk about responsibility. I found it a fascinating moment when we start talking about the impact of technology on the cohesion of society. we talk about the need for technology to also build a successful society. Regardless of the individual technologies, which we can get to, medical and privacy and Datenschutz, IoT, data going around borders, which we'll get to in a minute. But at a very general level, what's the ethical framework that we should be thinking about in technology? You had Alexander Karp, of all people, begging basically for government to make ethical and moral decisions. Many in the technological world would disagree with that. But if we are to look at self-regulation, if we are to look at our responsibility, where does that discussion begin? What self-regulation do we need in the technology world?
Well, let me have a go here first. I mean, I think a lot of this starts with transparency and privacy as, you know, very important partners here. So transparency, you know, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and where does that go. You know, artificial intelligence offers tremendous potential to change industries, to change the way that we experience the service that we get. It offers incredible productivity benefits. It offers incredible access to capabilities and insights that we never had before, but there are lots of concerns about it. And it's another one of these technology revolutions that, you know, we need to know about. So, you know, from an IBM point of view, we really believe that you need full transparency on what is that artificial intelligence? Where does it come from? How is it being used? How did it learn? You know, what was the base of information that it actually got its intelligence from? So transparency, you know, is a first sort of principle. And the other one, which we think is very, very important, is a basic principle that says that your data is your data. You know, as a company for us, you know, we will never try and monetize your data. That's yours. You know, we shouldn't be trying to mine your information to turn that into a retail transaction, to turn that into, you know, something that we use in some other way, in some other place. So, you know, we think they're sort of very important, you know, basic cornerstones in sort of approaching this space.
Andreas, here in Austria, as Max Schrems demonstrated for us all, technology companies have a lot of data points about us, let's say. And you live in a culture that cares greatly about data protection. The phone knows where I go, when I go, what I want, which can give me great value, but there's also some fear about that. What principles do you think are critical for our ethical framework?
For me, even from ethical side, I think we have to emphasize both sides of the flip side. It's super that you're taking Max Schrems, because what I don't like is that Max Schrems is more popular in Austria than most of the digital entrepreneurs are. So we are coming from an angel in Europe, which is very digital skepticism. That's the first anchor. And I think that is ethical wrong, because we are endangering the future of the company with this. So for me, first side of the coin is thinking positive, seeing it as a big opportunity to get more companies in, to get the development of the country ahead. On the other side, if you look to the industry development with the first cars, when the cars have been developed, you know, there were no streets, and for sure there were no rules for streets when the first cars were going. So also there at the beginning, you always start when you disrupt something or when you develop something with no rules. And I think in the meanwhile, we have to start about what is happening. And if you speak with Mark Zuckerberg, for example, when he started Facebook, he would not see himself as the biggest media company in the world 20 years later. But now he is. And so now we start to have to think is what kind of rules have to be established, for example, for media like Facebook, with the data he has and stuff like this. So I think first, be entrepreneurial, and second, analyze what you are doing, think about it ethical, and start to make rules. First, by the way, by yourself, because then it comes to a next problem. All these global digital companies, they are global. Who is ruling them? Who is ruling Facebook? In Europe, the European Union tries, but they have no impact because they are in the US. And these companies are like hybrid companies which are non-rulable. And I think that's a new point which is coming up, that the owner and founders themselves have to be ethical and establish rules by themselves, maybe government independent.
Yeah, I'm a fanboy of technology. Google's "Don't Be Evil" was a license that the founders gave to the employees to keep them from being evil, to make good business. But I come to see right now that "Don't Be Evil" didn't go far enough. Be good is the appropriate North Star. And it's hard to do that, but it's necessary. Robin, from the medical perspective, if we get into this securing of data, constant securing of data, my fear is that we lose the opportunity to learn from that data, but to potentially save lives from that knowledge. That we lock it all down, where do we go from there?
Absolutely. So I agree with Palantir in that it comes down to government regulation because there's no way to keep from everyone sharing this data. Let me give you a couple of examples of what's going on in the world of medicine. First, IBM Watson. They have a company that's plugged into their API called Ellie. It's decision support software. It is outperforming therapists and psychiatrists with PTSD and depression. Why? Is because it reads your facial expressions, tone of voice, and even the subtle way you string words together over a period of time, which means outside of the world of medicine, AI already, right now, is reading your emotions.
A serious question, have they run that against Donald Trump?
Ooh, I do not, do you know?
You're not going to say.
I think we should go to the next question.
We can use AI now to determine if you are lying or truthful. We can read your emotions. Second, company called Walmart, of course, largest corporation as measured by revenue stream. They took 20 years of back consumer data, layered it over 20 years of health data. They found out that if you change your laundry detergent one time in a year, you are 50 times more likely to have prediabetes or diabetes. This is a consumer shopping company, knows your risk of diabetes. So how are you going to, in the world of medicine, keep corporations from using this against you in some way?
But isn't there an obvious positive benefit?
Absolutely.
Is that I can warn you that you don't know it, but you're for God knows what reasons, perceptible.
And we're seeing that actually. So companies are doing studies and they are finding out, okay, so Jane Smith and Andreas Karp, they have a risk for diabetes or Alzheimer's or whatever it is. But because it's not anonymized data and because they never gave permission for that particular research study, these companies actually know these people are going to die and they cannot tell them, right? So there are problems with the fact that we aren't able to disclose the fact that we know somebody is about ready to get sick. And if they intervene now, we could save their life, but we can't do that.
So Andreas, let me come back to that question of fine government, but which government, right? On the one hand, because you say no government seems to be able to deal with these international companies, and indeed technology challenges governments themselves. But I also have the fear that we could end up with the lowest common denominator of freedom and the highest common denominator of regulation. And what if the companies have to be built to deal with the demands of China and Russia and Iran and such? Where should governance come from?
I think first, government, by the way, have to understand what is happening. And there, for me, it starts when I speak with a lot of politicians, not all, but a lot of, they don't understand what's happening. To give you an example, we now got a new minister for the European Union for the digital infrastructure. Never been in the digital area, coming, I think, out of Bulgaria, just for political reason. That's not the way how you drive such an important topic. So for me, the first point is that politicians have to understand what's happening. And I mean, in the US, it seems to be pretty much the same right now. Yep. Talking before understanding what's happening. And so for me, I would be fine if they start to understand, and then if we start to look on the complex issues where we can make defined borderlines. The example of face recognition, as you said, in medicine, face recognition is super duper. Even if you want to enter your house, maybe face recognition is much better than the key. But do you want to have HR departments which want to read out via face recognitions? If you have, you can say, if your money, your bank account is fine, if how your sexual orientality is, what is possible right now, that you just go into one direction and they say yes, no, yes, no. Do we want to be driven by automatism in this manner? I not. And so these are the slim lines, like taking the positive, like you said, but stopping the negative. And I think if we don't make rules, for sure, the negative thing is also happening. Why? Because there's money behind. If I have a company which sells face recognition, of course I would sell it to HR departments with this kind of solution. So this is why I believe defined borderlines have to be defined by a regulator, by a state.
Yes, and I believe that privacy and data protection are very important, but we're also very early in the internet. In Gutenberg years, not the prior Gutenberg, I would argue that we're about the year 1474. We don't know what the net is yet we see regulators coming along for good reasons and saying we have to define and thus limit the internet. I'm curious for your reaction to the impact of the GDPR, the data privacy regulations coming in next May. What's the impact on IoT, for example?
Well, I guess the way I would look at this is to say the harnessing of physical data is sort of the last frontier of the transformation that's been going on for 50 years. You know, we started with digitizing everything on the back end, moving to automation there. We went through a phase where we took our communications, online. We took our commerce online. And IoT is just the last frontier on this. This is the digitization of everything physical. So, the starting point is that 80% of all data is not in the public domain today. So only 20% is actually searchable and is available. Most of the rest of that data is either unreadable in current format or inside a company wall. So there's a tremendous power to unlocking that. For businesses, for consumers on their side, their personal data. And so what I see is tremendous upside and positive. And you said before, people in the technology trade are by definition almost optimistic here. So I look at it as very optimistic, and I think it's very important that these things are done, both industry and government together, to move forward. I completely agree that people who don't understand the issues shouldn't be legislating and putting up walls that prevent us from productivity in the future.
We kind of saw a preview of this in the UK not long ago when, and I believe it was kidney disease, that there was data that existed that could predict future cases, but that use was prevented because permission for that specific use was not granted way back when you couldn't anticipate the use. The balancing of data protection versus potentially saving lives strikes me as an ethical question that I'm trying to figure out. What's the impact of GDPR on medicine and specifically on machine learning, on the unexpected lessons that you get from data correlations, detergent and diabetes?
Yep.
What do you think of the legislation?
So I think that all data should be open. I do not believe that we should have privacy around any of the data, because the problem is the privacy around the data that we have now is patient-generated data or medical-generated data, and that's what everyone locks down. As I just told you in those two examples, outside of medicine, we can diagnose you now using a billboard with a mental illness. We can tell you, using artificial intelligence, if you are gay or straight. We know these things right now. So it's not the problem of the medical data, it's the problem of taking the data that we are acquiring through shopping, through walking down the streets, just through facial recognition, right? And so I believe that all data should just be completely open, privacy completely gone, but the government agencies come in and regulate in terms of saying you are not allowed to use data for nefarious purposes, meaning you're not allowed to discriminate, you are not allowed to not get a job or not allow someone into a school because of something you learned from data being generated in other places, right? So it comes down to not utilizing data in a bad way versus the fact that frankly, all data should be open, because with artificial intelligence and machine learning, you literally need trillions of data points. So the more data we can get to companies like IBM Watson, and I'm a huge fan of Watson, by the way, I have nothing to do with the company, the better, the faster we're going to do, and the faster we're going to start to solve some of these giant global problems like healthcare and food.
Andreas, what do you think of GDPR?
I think the example out of the UK, I think it's obvious. You cannot prevent using data where you can save life. And this is again what I mean. First, we need people who understand what's happening. And for this issue, I think it would be easy to get, you can say, a special ministerial approval exactly to approve this use case immediately in the first moment, without opening up to use data, and I'm not with you in particular of this, for everything right now at the same moment. But we need, you can say, more speed, we need more competence, and secondly, by the way, we need more speed in all the legal issues, because the digital development, like texts like this, they come up very in a moment, and you can use them immediately. And if you want to change laws, it takes 1 year, 2 years, etc. So this kind of speed, must be majorly increased if we take the opportunity out of it. Otherwise, it would be unethical not to save lives because we are just sitting there on a problem where we are not willing for complexity reason to solve it quickly.
So this afternoon, I'm going to be talking to Patrick Walker from Facebook up here. So what advice would each of you give Facebook for the principles upon which they should be operating now? Andreas, you seem ready.
I mentioned for Facebook, Facebook is a media company, and I would start with Facebook in two things. First, fake news. I think Facebook has to take responsibility about more truth of their content and at least get more speed in getting wrong content out. Because what you see, they prepared that you can say, hey, there's fake news in, but it takes quite a long while until the fake news are out. And all you can say, the artificial intelligence behind, the links behind, which are out already in other media, is also taken out. So this is for me the first part. And the second thing is, I have to ask myself, if I want to use Facebook, do they want to take really all my data? And I think for customer protection rights, in my infrastructure company, you know, when I want to change customer protection rights, all customers can stop the contract and directly go away. Nobody who is on Facebook is able to stop his contract because nobody would leave Facebook. And that's, you can say, an unbalanced issue. If Facebook is asking, do you want to stay in, take it, or do you want to go out, then you, of course, cannot take it. And there, I think we have to choose something in the middle which is more balanced.
Do either of you have advice for Facebook?
No, I thought that was a fascinating take. I mean, it strikes me that we have a lot of new company models, which where we have taxi replacement companies that don't have employees. We have new ways that the whole world connects with each other with no government, that can direct them really because they operate in the world. I think it's a fascinating line to go on.
I frankly think that Facebook is both a media company, but it is a data company, first and foremost. And if you look, the amount of health data that Facebook will have on us just because of our behavioral, right? The languages we use. You can look, and a big study just came out of MIT Media Lab, or MIT Media Review, Tech Review sent it out yesterday they analyzed social media data from Twitter and Facebook, and it really does turn out that weather has a massive impact worldwide on people's emotional states, right? And this is a very big deal when you're talking about mental illness or chronic disease, or just in general, your happiness level. This is the first time in history that a meta-analysis at this level has been able to be done because we have access to the sheer amount of worldwide data leading to that, right? So I think Facebook is a data company, and I think anyone who goes on Facebook, you are going on a free service. This is not a human right. This is a free company that is a for-profit. You going on there are saying, I'm giving up all my data, whether that is keystrokes, whether that's my happiness level, whether that's the fact that I'm gay or straight. Facebook is going to know this about me. They're going to release that data, and they can use it for the healthcare world, which is my dream. And so that's what I want Facebook to do. But I need to remind that to people, why are you even worried about privacy when you are talking about a free service of a for-profit company? Right.
So different topic. In all of the elections that I listed at the beginning, one of the huge issues, the politicians tend to have an incantation as if to the gods. If they just say jobs, jobs, jobs enough, they will appear. And that all problems will be solved if we create more jobs. We know that an issue of technology, if you look at retail in the US, malls are disappearing, stores are disappearing. I work at Times Square. If I want to buy a book, I have to walk 20 minutes.
You buy in person on a brick and mortar?
Well, that too. Well, if I want to browse and then decide what to buy on Amazon. So we do see jobs disappearing. It is going away. Is this the way of the world? Is it a concern for technology companies? Are we being honest with ourselves as a society about what's happening with jobs and employment or not? Anyone?
So I think it's a very real challenge that we all need to be stepping up to. I mean, the technology is opening up lots of new avenues for jobs in engineering, in data science, in analytics, in artificial intelligence and putting that to work. There are new opportunities. And our chairman has been very vocal in the need for a new style of job, which he calls, new collar jobs, which are really a hybrid in education of both in-practice experience and educational experience. That we think that companies need to be creating these new collar jobs. They need to be, putting new people into vocational practice, almost that mix between, trade and professional. Somewhere in there. So, we're investing in lots of different initiatives to try and help this. We have an initiative which we started in New York and has now expanded to many other states called P-Tech as an education approach for kids as they go through, where they start to get a lot more technology and start to experience some of the future capabilities and to start to build some of those practices. We have other initiatives going on with people like MIT to see, how we can help develop skills for the future. We just announced a $240 million 10-year initiative with MIT to develop new technologies, but also new skills, new roles, new education around the areas of artificial intelligence as well. So we think there's a real need. This is another industrial revolution that we're witnessing here. This is, we've attached Industry 4.0 very much to the manufacturing sector and industrial sector, but this is a revolution that we're going through in capability, and it needs to be taken very seriously as an investment period for government and for industry alike.
Andreas, we heard the morning begin about Austria as an industrial nation versus a startup world. Where is the economic growth and engine? Do you think there'll be enough jobs in the future?
Of course, I have concern that a lot of, jobs like set on the lower level, for example, in the big chains like Billa or Hofer, will be disappear and taken over by automatization. And this is why I think we have to do a lot on education to get our next generation, or even maybe our generation, up to a level that we are able to swap jobs. But I'm sure that not everybody can shift it around. For me, it is more important that we see that we have, we want to put in education, we've got the people at, but we also have to get companies in Austria who are acting in this new scene, of digital area. So my major concern is, how can we get startups involved? How can we train our today's industrial company about what do they have to do to stay ahead in the digital era? This is something where we also have to concern that everybody is aware where we have to develop.
That's very interesting, because when we talk about education, we tend to talk about the individual worker. You just said we have to educate the companies.
Yeah, that is, by the way, something what I try in my company, especially not the big companies. The big high-tech companies on the old world, they are also in the digital era right now. But you can say the mid-companies, like small paint shops, for example, they don't know what is coming up, and to train them up, what can they do, what instruments they can use. That is something, at least what I see as an infrastructure company, what is our aim to do.
Say more about that. List some of the skills. If you were a small Mittelstand company, what educational services would you offer to them?
I think all these Mittelstands companies, if you name it like them, have to understand what is happening, for example, in big data, what data they can use, where they can buy data, what kind of self-marketing they can do. And we see some of our customers who have been offering their services on a specific regional area, but somehow with digitization, they get orders out of other countries, out of Europe, suddenly. So these kind of, taking borders away, using different sales channels, etc., is stuff what we can train easily.
So Robin, you took the radical step, going even beyond me, that all data should be open. What do you say about jobs? Will there be enough jobs in the future, or do you care?
Absolutely. So disclosure, I was president of a company called Innovation for Jobs for a year under Vince Cerf in Silicon Valley. We talk about it being currently a task-based economy and turning that into a people-based economy. Throughout human history, technology has destroyed and then created jobs. So there's no reason to expect that not to continue. To give you an example, I've hacked my own education and I hacked a job together. Like literally, the job I do does not exist. And I'm seeing more and more people, especially in Silicon Valley, doing that. Like every single company I've ever worked for has created a position for me. right? And I'm seeing lots of startups doing that, but I'm also seeing lots of big corporations literally bringing in people, designing an entire career or a job around their personality and skill set. And then when it comes to hacking my skill set, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can go to any Ivy League or top college, university in the United States at night for a few $100s per class. I went to Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, Dartmouth, Wellesley, Golden Gate, Boston University, and I had a high-end education in high school. I went to a boarding school. But I didn't get any of those degrees, right? I didn't care. I don't need letters after my name. I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm seeing lots more people, especially in Silicon Valley, thinking that way. Why am I going to spend 2-3 years getting an MS and a PhD or an MD when I can take the courses I want online through MIT, through any of the Ivies, through Udacity, right? Udacity is now offering a course on learning how to build a flying car, an autonomous vehicle, seriously, that flies. You can take that course right now on Udacity. Right? So it's hacking together and doing what you love.
Please be careful. Be very careful.
So it's really finding out what you love and pursuing that and finding the skill set and building that yourself.
So I have one more topic, which is related to what you said, Andreas, about Facebook and the so-called fake news issue. And it goes back to the elections again. Part of what we see, I think, online and technology's role here is a question of what is happening to civility. What is happening to our personal relations? I like technology. I like social media. I like talking to people and meeting new people around the world because of it. The reason I'm here is because I met people because of blogging back in the day. But clearly we have an issue right now in society with trying to understand how to connect with each other and deliberate government and society. What Alexander Karp said today was just kind of hand it over to government. Well, government is the people, and if the people cannot figure out how to deliberate together, we got a big honking problem. Is there anything that we can do in technology related to trying to improve civility?
I think especially if you deal with the top companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, as you said, Robin, they are data companies. And I think also for our civility, it is very important in the education that everybody knows that these are data companies. Normally we are used in our way of living that we buy something and we pay something. There's a price, you pay $1 or you pay €1 or stuff like this. But you don't have the feeling that you are paying when you use something that you pay with your data, your personality data. And I think as you have a price level like €99, we have to show in these big data companies what kind of price level are you actually paying for the service what you are doing. And this on a pragmatic way I think is important that the people understand that they pay with their customer data and later on they understand that their customer data are used, and when they see information advertising, they might understand that's exactly an information coming out of the data just left behind. And I think this, you can say, development of understanding a currency, a new currency. This is underdeveloped, and this would help to get on our civilization in a better manner, understanding the digital area of the big B2C companies.
Though you also get high value back. We get incredible services.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, yes, you get a high value back, but you don't know what price you are paying. I would be more fair like saying, for example, geodata. If Facebook or Google would say, do you want to use geodata? And you can see it on the first page. And if you don't want to use it, you have to pay $1 just to use Gmail or Facebook, etc. But to understand, you can take a coin data or you can take a coin euro to get this kind of service. Right now it feels, and if you ask my friends about Gmail and all this stuff, they think, and even intelligent people think, it's for free. And they don't ask what the currency behind is. And I think this is education we all must make about understanding the currency, like we have to understand money.
And you've succeeded as a phone company in selling technology for a fee. It
Exactly.
works.
I still have to get my money for euros. Pitifully.
We are
I'm
out of
regulated.
time. I want to thank you all for your kind and lengthy attention. Thank you very much.